Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Dream Chasers Ground Zero. Today, I have Axel Monsaingeon with us. Axel, would you just mind telling us a little bit about your story and just kind of opening up with us about your personal ground zero moment? Just kind of telling us what that was like for you and to piggyback off of that, some of the things that you learned along the way to get to where you are today.
Sure. Well, first of all, hey, Aaron, it's great to have me here today. Thank you very much for the invite. My ground zero moment, it's a really good question, and it's not something that I often think about, but it was about 4 years ago. I could go back to the original date if you want. It's just that I was working in the corporate world. I guess I was raised with the mindset of, go to school, go learn something, and then go work for somebody else and try to climb the corporate ladder. And was not so bad at it. It's just that our first child was born. We have two kids now, but at the time we had just one. And I just realized like I just didn't want to live like that anymore with the pressure of the corporate world and just working, feeling that every good decision that I make, every time I get a score, it's actually for somebody else. And I just realized I don't want to live like that anymore. I want to take full responsibility for my life, make my own decisions and all the adjustments that go with it. And so to go back to your question, my ground zero moment was when our our son was about 6 months old. We were both working in the corporate world with my wife. She does long hours. She's a tax lawyer. She needs to be in the office, and we needed to take care of our newborn. And I just couldn't live like that anymore. That was it. That was it. And the decision went fairly quickly. My wife tells me I'm transparent in the way of like, when thing isn't going well, I usually say it, and I say it pretty quickly, like, I'm not okay with this. I don't want to go in this direction. And so we just kind of still organize it because she was off work. I needed to go back. I was just genuinely unhappy in the corporate world because, to make a long story short, I had been in a company for 5 years, been promoted 3 times, done well. And then one of our suppliers had actually poached me, and they kind of promised like a great position and this and that. It was a very large company, and I went over there, and after 6 months, I was just so unhappy. And it may sound ironic to you, okay, but I was unhappy because they weren't using me to my full potential. And I remember going to the HR department, which I don't particularly like doing, and say, look, if you don't keep me more busy, I'm gonna leave. I'm not happy here. You're using me for this. I could do 3 times that. And she told me, oh, Axel, just take it easy, just cruise along. That's not the type of person I am, man. I can't just cruise along and pretend and punch in, punch out 9 to 4 and stuff. If you're not going to use me better to my full potential, I will go find something else. And so that's what I did. And I left. And the to go back to your question about the ground zero moment, because that's really the topic of the conversation, is realizing that I am not being used for my full potential. I can build and deliver so much more. And then I'm just going to go out and do it on my own because I don't want to work for other people that aren't happy with the work. And it's not everyone was happy with the work. Don't get me wrong. It's just I could do more. There you go.
No, 100%. No, I really love that. That's where I think a lot of people that might be tuned into this when it is released can really, really relate to that. I think there's a ton of people, I mean, even myself, that totally understand where you're coming from there. I like in my personal experience, that's kind of a lot where I was. Like I was waking up every day and I was, crossing off, the things that I needed to do, but then I'd sit there and I'd go, there's got to be more for me.
Yeah.
And I just knew somewhere inside of me that I was supposed to be doing something bigger.
Yeah.
And that's where, you kind of just have to turn that corner and you're like, you know what? This is kind of the abyss, I guess you could say, going into this whole new direction. You have no clue really where you're going, but I'd almost rather be there than where I'm at right now. And at least there, I'm doing something, at least aligned with me, where
Exactly.
here I'm just unhappy. Here I don't know really what I'm doing anymore. All I know is it's just creatively, mentally just draining what I have left, and it's not worth it anymore. So
No.
that's where you just adventure out in that whole new direction and try to find
and,
something new.
and you just have to make a choice. And you said it perfectly, is that You know, you're young. Well, I'm still young too, and I don't want to settle for something kind of mediocre, but that kind of fits the bill just because we need to pay for the mortgage. Like, no, I'd rather take a risk and create a situation that, yeah, it might be harder at the beginning. Yeah, it's going to be a pay cut. Yeah, we're going to have to make some choices and sacrifices. But when I go to bed at night, I know it was my choice, it's my responsibility, and I will find a way to make it work, whatever happens. And in our case, we had a good balance with my wife because she continued working. And so for some time, you know, we lived on her income. I went and I did some consulting on the side. I did 2 6 months mandates in different small companies, which was a lot more of a human size. We actually worked well together as a team, and so on and so forth. And then at the time, we had already started investing in real estate, and then really went into real estate full time. And as a lot of people know, real estate is, we treat it as an equity game. Yeah, we get some cash flow, but it's about the equity that we build over time. And so I haven't fully replaced my income yet. That's for sure. But we've been adding, you know, properties to the portfolio. It will pay off years from now. But at the same time, I wouldn't have been able to do those acquisitions and find partners and so on if I had still been in my 9 to 5 job. So to go back to what you said, like, we are too young to settle for something that doesn't make us happy. Life is short. I'm 38 years old and I'm like, man, I wish I would have known that earlier. And we'll talk about it later about, you know, advice for young people, because there's so many people out there that are young that don't want to make a change because we've been brainwashed to go to university, go find a corporate job, go up the ladder, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that fits for some people, but for a lot, it doesn't. And it just creates unhappiness. And again, like, if you're not happy, plan. It doesn't mean act right away, but take a stand, make a decision, prepare, and then move on.
Absolutely. No, I really love the way you said that too. Like, I like to think that I was lucky enough to recognize that sooner than most, just in the way that I saw my parents, you know, with their, I guess you could say, like, environments and stuff growing up, and like the way that they worked and their personal schedules and things like that. I just knew from an early age that was not what I wanted to do. And
Mm-hmm.
the only thing there is I didn't know what else I was going to do until rather recently was I able to find that there are even other possibilities out there. And that's where I really had to, you know, kind of find my way in a sense. And I still am, and that's totally okay. But like I said, I think I consider myself lucky enough to have recognized that sooner, but there's some people that I'm trying to reach that are still on that, and they don't even know really where they're heading. They're just
Yeah.
doing what they've always been told.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm here trying to write the other way. So
And you're doing it the right way, is that it's convincing one person at a time, and it's not like you have to convince them and nag them. It's just by sharing other people's stories and experiences to hear that it is possible. Because once again, like, I truly believe that our educational system is really tailored for maybe 30% of students, and that society is pushing us in a direction that isn't necessarily the best for us individually. And I remember being in the corporate world and feeling proud. And I've had, don't get me wrong, I'm not spitting on it. I've had fabulous work experiences. I've met tremendous people, and I have amazing memories. It's just that at the end of the day, and when we had our son, it was like, I had, you know, I had to ask to leave at 4 o'clock because I had to go to take him to the doctors. I don't want to live like that. I just don't want to live like that. I'm a big boy now. I can make my own decisions, and I'm gonna go change it. And to go back to what you said, is that too many people wait and don't take action. You have to start one step at a time. You can't build a wall in one day. You just put one stone, and then the next day you put another stone, and eventually it goes up. And you know, you're more in contact with, you know, I'm still young, but like with people maybe in like mid 20s that they don't really see it yet, in terms of there's other possibilities. You don't have to be, I was going to say in quotation mark, like the slave to somebody else. You can do things on your own.
yeah, absolutely. No, and I think just one of the things you just said there is, like, I know we've spoken numerous times on this subject on the show before, but still, like, I cannot stress enough, like, what I like to call the little victories. Like you said, that one stone at a time, that one step at a time. Like, the people that you see look at like these big, I mean, I guess you could say like influencers and all these people out there that have all this traction and all this attention that most people know about, in these spaces that do, kind of what they want and as they choose or whatever you want to call it there. They didn't get there in a day, like you
No.
just said. Like it takes small, consistent amounts of work.
Mhm.
And and it is a grind. It is a grind, but at the same time, would you rather grind and achieve that result for yourself in 10 or so years? Or would you rather look at yourself in the mirror in 10 or so years and say, all the work that I've done has promoted somebody else?
Exactly.
And that's where I was just like, nope, not for me. I'm going to try to find something else.
Yeah. And you said it right. Like it's about the consistency. Once people realize they want to make a change in their life, yeah, it's not like overnight, like boom, whether it's to get great abs, whether it's to be healthy, whether it's to develop other streams of income and stuff like that. It's, as you said, it's small victories. And I remember, so I had left the corporate world. I was doing some consulting, and in that case, consulting is a fancy way to say that I was working for small companies on specific mandates. Okay, and at the time, I was already looking at real estate and multifamily in particular, which we've been investing in now, and people would tell me, but when do you have time to do this? And it was at night once everyone was in bed, and I'd spend 2 hours looking at what was on the market, doing the research, crunching the numbers and stuff so that I could actually, within my, I was going to say day job and occupation, still move forward one small step at a time. And sometimes my task of the day was just like, if I could go to bed and say that I finally spoken to this person that I wanted to reach, I'll be happy with my day. And that was just one phone call, but just like small steps, like, hey, crunch this extra property, small things, so that it's over a 6 months period. It's over 2 years that it makes a difference. It's not instantaneous. And sadly, in today's society, we want the instant reward. We want it right now. I want to be a millionaire tomorrow. Well, it doesn't work that way. Otherwise, buy a lottery ticket and you most likely won't win. So sorry.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's where a lot of like students or just young individuals and stuff now don't kind of realize the position that they're in. And that's where like me, I mean, like I said, I just kind of felt unfulfilled in what I was doing. And that's where I decided to venture out. But there's a lot of people that, I mean, they're going to class, they're getting those things done. And then they come back from class and they spend the rest of the day drinking with their buddies. And, then the next day, repeat. Like,
Yeah.
and that's fun. It's lighthearted. You don't have that weight on your conscience or anything like that. But at the same time, like,
What have you done?
exactly. And then like for me, like you didn't achieve anything that day. And like for me, I always had this kind of picture of what I wanted my life to look like. And I mean, some
Yeah.
people don't have that, and that's okay. But
Mhm.
like I eventually realized that like the stuff I was doing on the daily wasn't moving me towards that. And I was like, okay, something has to change or I'm literally never going to get there.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm saying like a lot of people now will spend their days like the situations that I explained, but like then I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over my words here a little bit, but what I'm saying is like they will end up in a corporate job and then they'll be like, what happened?
Yeah.
And that's where I'm saying like now really the biggest time commitment you have is getting your schoolwork done. Other than that, like you might have a girlfriend or you might have friends and stuff, but other than that, like you don't have kids, you don't have
Mhm.
bills, you don't have, what I mean, all these other things going on. Like you are in the prime stage to
Yeah.
do whatever you want with
Yeah.
your life right now.
And sorry, if I don't want to jump in, because you're describing one of the most, and that's something I wish I would have done differently. And I'll talk a bit about more later. Is that when you're in university, as you said, like your only responsibility is basically taking care of yourself, going to class, and try to get decent grades. You don't have to be an A student. You could be a B and do fine. But as you said, like it's when you have sometimes some of the most time, depending on your situation, like sometimes you have to work to cover some of your bills. Sometimes it's covered. It depends on each individual situation. And I just want to take two examples of people that I've met, okay, in university. And one of them, like, as you said, while everybody else was just going to class, cruising by and doing the strict minimum, he was really diligent about taking good notes in his classes. And he realized that over time, people kept asking him, can I get a copy of your notes? Can I get a copy of your notes? And he was like, you know what? Why would I take notes for everyone? So I'm just going to start selling them. And the thing is that he developed a business that he took all his notes properly, computer, like, perfectly done. He could make a book with it. And then he started to take notes from other people from other classes that he didn't take, compile them properly, and to start like to do books and binders and to start to sell them. And then he would take like a good student to kind of give tutoring to other people. Basically, by the end of his 4 years of university in that business, he was grossing 80K a year. So so he was a business student, clearly. But so he used his time in university to build a business. And by the time he finished university, he didn't need to go work for anybody else. He was just kind of like, he had put a system in place. He was making money. Now, you need to stay in, because once you graduate, your mind kind of leaves the university. You have to stay in that. For him, he's saying like, it's hard because I have to stay in that university mode of like, people just want to party and stuff. And I just want to find them a quick, easy way for them to pay for my notes. But that was a good example of, he had hustle, he had time, and he put it to good use so that he perfectly transitioned. And I thought this guy was like, to me, he was a star because he got it. Okay. Another example that I know is someone who was in university, and she was like in a big house. I think there was 10 or 11 roommates, and no one was managing the place. It was like pile of dishes. It was, garbage and stuff. And she kind of became like the property manager, and she learned how to deal with people and how to get them to do stuff that they didn't necessarily want, take the garbage out, do a schedule and stuff like that. And she became an amazing property manager. She started a business in property management. And, at her peak, I think she managed a couple of 100 units. And that's just because when she was in university, she actually took some of her hustle and give it a purpose and a direction to transform it into a skill that's actually marketable and that's worth something. And so going back to, you mentioning like, oh, some people, all they want to do is just take classes and drink and stuff. You know what? Too bad for them. They're the ones who, I don't want to say are going to be left behind, but they're not going to take the 3 extra steps to propel themselves forward.
Yeah, 100%. I really love the couple examples that you just gave. And I know, I believe it was episode 3, my interview with Christopher Nelson that we have on here. He gave an example of a student that he interviewed fresh out of college 1 year, and he, was working at a tech company, and I believe the student came into the interview, and really all of his prior experience was that he was the president of a fraternity, and he was like, what's this going to be? He's like very curious where this is going to go.
Yeah.
But then he came in and very cleverly laid out how exactly his experience in managing that fraternity fit him into that position, that he was able to explain how he was able to get, other students to do these things and follow the schedule, and all these things that he did made him perfectly fit that bill. And then he got hired. Yeah. But at the same time, like, no, he didn't really have any prior experience, but he was able to tailor the experience that he had as to why he'd be a good fit for that position, regardless of what that position looked like. And even the fact that the person hiring him was like, what is this going to look like? But he did it. And that's where, he really just kind of, a lot of like you just said, especially in those couple stories there, that a lot of students are building experiences right now that they don't know they can use to market themselves, I guess you could say, because like something like that, even like when he initially said it, I was like, oh, like, what's this going to be? But then he like explained it through the story. And I was like, you know what? Like, wow, like kudos to him for, first of all, being able to recognize that and use that for himself.
Yeah.
But it also made me realize like there's so many people out there with experiences already that they don't realize they can use to do that because they think they're just irrelevant.
Yeah. And this is a fantastic example that you brought. And one of the takeaways is that he was able to do this because in the first place, he decided to get involved. And I know I might have said it already a few times, but like, get involved. I don't want to say in whatever. Try to pick something that you're interested in, because then it'll never be a hassle, that you feel that you can positively contribute with a group of people that you mostly enjoy being with and stuff like that. There's obviously some givens, but just as you said, just being involved in whatever group, organization, task, action, and so on will give you experience and skills that is completely transferable to the workforce when you want to get hired, and even just learning how to deal with people, just small things like that. But I don't want to generalize, but again, so many people like, oh, but if I get involved in this, then I have to give up that. Well, yeah, you have to make choices and sacrifices, but this is gonna, you know, I recall stories of like just, getting involved in something and then meeting someone who introduced me to someone who then pretty much offered me a job. And it's like, man, I would have never gotten there otherwise. Like, thank you. I'm so glad I went for a drink with you, that you introduced me to this guy. And it's just take the steps, get involved, talk to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I know like I said, within the last, I don't know, year or so, like since getting connected to my mentor, Adam Carswell, and these things, he has truly helped me kind of open my mind to all of these things. And that's
Yeah.
where, a lot of this really comes from. But the power of networking was something that I completely overlooked, especially prior to being connected with him. I was like, yeah, I'll go meet people, and like, yeah, that's cool and all, but it seemed like what's that get me? And I was like now I look back and I'm like, hello, like
Yeah. Hello.
flashing red
Yeah.
light, like
Yeah. Why
like
was it not more obvious?
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and I don't want to like point any fingers as to, like whose fault that is, that nobody really realizes that. But what I am saying is that there's not enough people that do realize that. And networking can take you places like that you can't even fathom. Like,
Yeah.
just you never know who knows who, and like how easy it is really to get connected
Hmm.
with people like this. I mean, and a
Uh,
podcast is a great medium to do that. Now, I'm not telling everybody to go start a podcast, but it is a great
mhm.
way to do that.
Yeah.
um
I mean, if I may touch on that,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
you mentioned Adam, and you've been working with Hunter Thompson. I've actually followed a little bit of his advice, and going now full time into real estate. I realized here in Montreal, like I've met so many people with talent, and I was like, I wish we could share their story. So last fall, I actually started a little podcast. It's called The Very Real Estate Effect. And if anyone wants to listen, let me know what you think. And it's exactly what you said, is that I didn't realize how much of a good networking tool it was. And I didn't do that to network. I just did it because I wanted to share other people's
Hmm.
stories. And I ended up like reaching out to a huge Montreal developer and be like, hey, I'd love to interview you. It's for a podcast and stuff. And he was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. I couldn't even believe he took my call. I couldn't believe like he took an hour and he gave me some advice. The guy's raised 100 million in 3 weeks, and been like on a track record like to the moon. And that's the type of people I want to associate with. I want to learn. And after recording his interview, just having an hour with him, I was pumped up for 2 days, just thinking like, man, the sky's the limit. We can do it. And so to go back to what you mentioned, like networking is important. And one piece of I'd like to share is that for me, networking changed when I started to think that it wasn't about me, it's about others. And I used to go to an event thinking like, okay, like who should I meet that can help me? And
Hmm.
now I take it the completely opposite way. Now it's who is it that I can help over there? And I get people to talk, and then you meet someone, and then 10 minutes later you meet someone else, and you're like, oh, hey, Robert, have you met John? Hey, you guys should meet. And you didn't know any of them. It's just that you had conversations. And so networking for me has become a lot more strong, and I was going to say powerful, in making connections between people, in trying to build value for them first. I'm a strong believer in karma, and what goes around comes around. And if you help others, good things will happen to you. And you're absolutely right that the networking, as you said, like can land you in situations that you would have never even imagined.
Absolutely. I really love the way that you put that. And I mean, even in my, like experience so far, I can tell you the more you give to people and the more you're willing to help others, that just the more is going to come back to you. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be next week, but the more you put yourself out there to help others, all the more is going to come back to you in the end. And really, that's the mindset that I've tried to approach everything with. But one other thing I wanted to touch on there is that a lot of students don't realize how easy it is really to get connected with those people. Like you just said, like you reached out to that huge developer and couldn't even believe he took your call. Well,
Mhm.
like, I mean, I know we've touched on it before on the show, but at the same time, like it's such a powerful thing that there are so many people out there that want to help you. And I
Yeah.
cannot like stress that enough. Like whatever really, like I mean, I specifically know the real estate industry just because that's where I was able to get my foot in and that's where I've been working. But I mean, real estate has been truly, truly, truly great. And I cannot necessarily speak for every industry, but at the same time, like I know there's good people out there somewhere. They usually will keep to themselves, but at the same time, like there's people that want to help you and everybody can relate to where you were. Everybody was always at that point at some point in time. And if you just approach them and, you know, like you said, you just wanted to share a story or, you know, or you just come out and you ask, genuinely ask for advice, ask for help. There's not too many people that are going to tell you no. Now, if you come in, you try to solicit them something or whatever, and you're trying to like get an interview or, you know, all these big asks at one time, they're not, it's not going to work that way. But if you approach it genuinely, honestly, and just ask them for their help, for their expertise, not usually are you going to be turned back.
Yeah.
In my personal experience, I can tell you that's worked for me. So
you're absolutely right. And it's funny because the real estate industry kind of sometimes has this image that like, oh, it's plenty of sharks and stuff like that. Yeah, there's sharks just like in every ocean, like in every industry. But as you said, there are so many people who will take the time to help you because as you mentioned, like we all started at the ground zero. We all were beginners. No one was born knowing how to underwrite a property. No one. And if they claim they were, BS, okay? And it's amazing how much people will help you. And it's funny because last year someone reached out to me and we started to develop a bit of a relationship and he'd call me and I'd call him and stuff like that. And after a couple of months, he was like, oh yeah, I was talking to someone else about my mentor and this and that. And I was like, oh really? Like, oh, you have a mentor? That's cool. He's like, yeah, that's you. And I was like, oh, me? What? Who? What? And it was like, yeah, because you know, you've been helping and you may not realize, but it's actually like helped me to do offers and to get confidence and stuff like that. And so we have a little bit of a trade-off where I give him tasks, he helps me with some stuff. He wanted to be involved in a transaction. I pay him like a very small fee on a monthly basis for him to take care of it. And I told him, that's your ticket to learn. You want to learn? Go do it. When you get stuck, call me. I'll give you a key. I'll give you a clue. And it's amazing how much it goes both ways. And as you said, if you don't ask, you're never going to have the chance to be surprised by how much people want to help you. So reach out. And as you said, don't ask for big ticket items. And one piece of advice would be like, hey, if you want to work with someone or if you'd like to spend time with them, just ask them if there's anything you can help them with for free. And I know with this guy, for example, you know, he's asked me and I was like, actually, yeah, I have a list of properties. Would you just call the owners and just like, you know, see if there's interest, just like ask him a few questions. And we kind of went through together. And then, you know, we come back and it's like 4 leads. Great. But he saved me 3 hours and he learned. And so it's always a win-win situation. And you're absolutely right. Like, don't be afraid to ask. And that's something that I wish I would have been told when I was younger, is like, have the courage to reach out, because in most cases, people will be surprised and impressed that you actually reached out and they'll do their utmost to help you.
Absolutely. No, I really love the way you worded all that. And I mean, I don't want to keep circling around the same point, but at the same time, I keep thinking of things that I want to like add to it.
Sure.
Like I listen to a decent amount of like Grant Cardone's content. And one of the quotes that I really liked from him that I heard just recently, I think it was an interview with somebody. It was like a short clip on Instagram or something. And he was asking the other guy what he did, and he was explaining everything. And he like cuts him off. And he's like, well, listen, like, were you born a salesman, or were you born a real estate agent? Were you born whatever that thing is? And he like gives him a second to answer. And then he cuts him off. He says, no, you were born a baby.
Yeah.
He's like, and like, it's the simplest little thing, but I was like, wow, like, it's still like, you know, just that concept that like, you're not born one thing and you're not stuck in one thing, and you can change that however you want. And a great way to do that is through networking. And like you just said, like, I literally did that. Like, that's literally how I got connected with Adam. That's literally how I ended up working in this space. And I can tell you, it's taken me on a path that I never saw for myself, but is where I want to go. And it is aligned with where I want. And all I did is I reached out to a guy and I said, please help me. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, and he opened up to me. He was like, yeah, let's do it. I'll help you out. Like, let's do this. And eventually I just stayed connected with him, kind of like you explained. It was, you know, a couple of phone calls here and there, continued to talk. And then eventually I was like, look, I'm looking for work. I'd love to have an internship somewhere in the field. Do you know anybody? And he was like, dude, like, if you want to help me out, like, let's make it happen. And that was the first big step, I guess you would say. But that has taken me down this path that now, I've grown exponentially in the last year,
Yeah.
that that's what I wanted, and I didn't even really know it, but like I was doing the right things, and now I'm trying to help more people do that is really what I'm doing. But like, that's exactly what I did. And I just literally said, like, you don't have to pay me. You don't have to do whatever it is. Help me get my foot in somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, that's really all I wanted. And then,
Yeah.
like I said, that's where really the snowball really started to kind of grow from there. And
But the
that's
thing
what,
is,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but you said it at the beginning. You took the step to reach out to someone and be the naked baby in front of him and be like, look,
Mhm.
this is what I'm trying to do. I look up to you. How can we make this work? And I'm sure you worded it differently, but like, you took the initial step, you got involved, you reached out, and that says a lot about you, and how much you can achieve because you took the first step forward.
Yeah, and I will say, like I said, I don't want to talk about this too much, but that first step is really what holds a lot of people up. And I think, like, just in my conversations with other people and stuff, and I mean, I'll even admit in my own experiences of stuff, like taking that first step is the most kind of difficult.
Mhm.
And if you don't know what you're doing, it's extremely hard to like convince yourself to start.
Yeah.
And like, but there's just a point, like for me, it's usually a point that I get frustrated enough with where I'm at that I do it anyway, because what do I have to lose at this point?
Exactly.
But
What's the
I
worst
know,
that can happen? They say no. Big deal. You walk
right.
away. Thank you for your time. Goodbye. Worst comes to worst, they'll say no. And it's funny because I use that with my 4-year-old son. We talk about it with friends and stuff, and I'm like, why wouldn't you try? Like, just go and try it. Worst comes to worst, it doesn't work. Big deal. You didn't lose anything. You just didn't win. Take a chance to have a winning ticket.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's really, really important to stress that, like for me, my interest was real estate, and really I didn't even know that. But once I did realize that, like I got connected to Adam, and he's not some big powerhouse guru, person. Like really, like I mean, he had a good following, but at the same time, like if you go ask somebody on the street, they're not gonna know who he is.
No.
Like, but that's exactly the point I'm trying to make here, is that if you want to reach out to somebody in whatever space you're interested in, they don't have to be, what I mean,
The
cure of
king.
cancer level. They don't
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
be some guru influencer or whatever that everybody knows. And like it doesn't have to be like that. They just have to be
Mhm.
somebody one step ahead of you. Like that's literally that, like that was one of the things that it took me kind of forever to realize. Like, and luckily I made the correct step in not knowing that. But what I'm saying is that it took me a long time to realize just how important it is that, like, to learn from someone, they don't have to be 27 steps ahead of you. They need to be one or two, and
Yeah.
you can learn on that step, and then you can go from there, and you can continue to reassess that and reuse those steps that you've used just over and over until you keep helping your growth wherever step you're at in your own journey. And then all of a sudden you realize you're on step 5 and you meet someone on step 1.
Exactly.
You can help them too. You don't
Mhm.
have to be at some crazy level to help somebody else out that that's into the same thing as you. And that's, like I said, that was really like a big thing for me in realizing that, like, you don't have to be like the person in that industry or whatever you want to call it. Like, you don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be that like extremely qualified position, whatever you want to call it, in
Yeah.
order to help somebody out or to learn from somebody else.
Absolutely. No, definitely. It's you just have to pick someone with who the values are aligned, and they're closer to the goal than you are.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. With that, I know we did take that conversation on for a little while, but I did really, really enjoy it. Lots of great stuff in there. I do think it's about time to start winding it down, though. I don't want to take up too much of your time today. Um, but I do know you mentioned earlier, and I want to make sure we don't miss it, that you mentioned a couple times, like further points in your story that you wanted to touch on later. I do want to
Oh yeah. So
make sure I
like,
open that up to you before.
yeah, thanks for the reminder of like,
Mhm.
things that I wish if I could go back and rewind, what is it that that I would do differently? And in a way, there isn't all that much in terms of how I would change my life because we're very happy where we are today. It's just that I wish that, for example, when I was in university, I would have learned more about how to create a life without being a salaried employee, how to create, how to properly invest. First of all, and that's something that I don't know if there's a country out there that does it properly. At least in Canada, I don't think we do. Is teaching people the basic financials, personal finance. We don't teach that. It should be mandatory. And so, how to properly invest, how to build different streams of income, how to kind of, be your own boss and manage a small business with all the basics. Everyone's doing a bit of accounting, everyone's doing a bit of marketing, everyone's doing a bit of operations, and so on and so forth. And so, to go back to your question about, or what I had mentioned about things I wish I would have done differently, is that I wish when I was like in my mid 20s, I would have laid out more of a path on how to build a life that I actually wanted. And I say this from a financial point of view, and life isn't about finances, and we don't have to financialize everything. But the truth is, like, we have to have a roof over our head, and we have to pay our electricity bill, and we have to buy diapers for the kids. So you do need a certain amount of money every month. And so how to create that income without trading your time to someone else for another goal that you don't necessarily care about. And I know it may sound basic, but for young people out there, like, just educate yourself. I was going to say a little bit out of the mainstream. Go and listen to some successful people who've done it. You mentioned Grant Cardone. That's one of many. But just on how to create income that allows you to build and afford, so to speak, the lifestyle that you want. Because once again, I realized I was a bit, misled and brainwashed in university, that I had to go down the corporate world and had to go work for somebody else, and had to go save 4% of my income every year so that it compounds and blah, 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 and stuff like that. Like, you can do very, very, very differently. That would be my main, and I could develop on that, but I know, we're capped for time, and I want to be reasonable. And lastly, and I know I've said it, but I can't hold it in, is get involved. Get involved with an association. Get involved with your alumni school association, and you'll meet professionals. Go, with sports team. Go get involved. Like, there's so many different ways that get you more ingrained into the fabric of society, and that creates opportunities. Because you go to an alumni association, it's all people in their 50s and 70s, and all of a sudden you're 25, you look like the star, but you didn't do anything. All you did was show up.
100%. No, I really like the way you worded that. And I think that was kind of powerful enough in itself. I think you really covered everything there. But yeah, I mean, with that, just lots of great value out of today's episode, and I do want to touch on one of the things you mentioned there, that especially for young people out there right now. I know I did an interview a few weeks back that it'll be released prior to this one, but it's with Jason Mittman. Mm-hmm. And in that interview, we had a conversation, and he was asking about, like, my kind of story, I guess, where I kind of got into real estate and things like that. And we were talking about, like, risks and fear and, things of that sort. And he goes, let me ask you a question. He says, if you try this and you fall flat on your face, do you have somewhere you could stay, that you could have a roof over your head? And I said, yes. And he says, do you have somewhere that you'd be able to have meals? Do you have someone that could provide you with food? And I said, yes. He's like, do you have somewhere that you could drink clean water and, survive? And I said, yes. And he said, then what the hell are you waiting for?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
yeah.
Like, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
Like, because honestly, like, that's it. Like, I mean, I will say that I was one of those people that was so, like, scared to kind of take those steps and didn't want to jump out too far and fall on my face. But failure has been something that I've totally changed my mindset about in, meeting many professionals and, talking to people that have had to deal with that. And that's really helped me a ton. And that's a whole nother tangent we could go on, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But what I'm saying is just that we are in such a position in, and I won't say that everyone, but usually most people know someone that, if you try this and fall on your face, you'd have somewhere to stay, you'd have food, like you could figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of takes all that risk out of it. Like, even if you fail, it's going to be okay. You can start over. You can go again. And I mean, if you don't want to try something else, figure out why it didn't work and try that again. That's entrepreneurialism in a nutshell is what
Absolutely.
that is. But yeah, that's just where I really wanted to throw that point out there, because it really helped me realize, like, what am I waiting for? Like, let's do this. Let's make something happen. Yeah.
Our own fear. We are one of our worst enemies. Like, our own fear is what holds us back. And as you said, if all your basic needs can be covered, why aren't you plowing ahead? But that's fear, the fear of failure, the fear of look like an idiot. And we all know people say, yeah, but I can't do this. Like, what if it doesn't work out? Well, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but you took the chance that it would work. What if you don't try and you're an idiot for not trying because it could have worked? So just put your fear aside and just take a calculated risk and move ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a good way to wrap up here today, is just kind of to leave everybody thinking, what's the worst that could happen? And like you mentioned earlier, like when you reach out to somebody, they could say no. So what?
So what?
Go to
hang up the phone.
Go to somebody else. There's numerous people out there. There's not a finite supply of people that you could reach out and talk to. There's always somebody else. And maybe it'll take you a few tries, but somebody is going to have that conversation with you. Somebody is going to help you. Or, whether it's trying to start a business or, maybe whatever kind of direction you're going in, what's the worst that could happen? You look stupid, or you run out of money or whatever. But you can always find another job. Trust me, people are hiring right now. You can find another job.
Yeah.
But or somebody can help. Like, there's always somebody. Like, you can go back. Yeah, maybe you have to go back home for a few months. And I can tell you that, like, I'm somebody that, like, if this, like, what I'm trying to do doesn't work, I will have to go back home, and that's going to be a serious scenario all in of itself. But
that's enough of a motivator for you to make sure that it works. Of course, you don't want to go home, but if you have to, you will. But every night when you go to bed, say, I'm going to find a way to make it work. It will be successful. I will find a way. I will find a way. And eventually, when you repeat enough, you'll believe it, and you will find a way.
Absolutely. And, I think that's a really good place for us to kind of really close it out here today. Axel, thank you so much for coming on and just sharing everything. I know tons and tons of great value in today's episode. I know we went a little longer than I told you we would, but I also told you,
it's a pleasure.
We knew we were going to end up on some sort of tangent there. So, I'm really glad we did, though, because I think there was so much value today. So I just really appreciate you coming on and, sharing your story and, sharing all these valuable nuggets for everybody to listen to. And I really hope they hit you guys as hard as they hit me today. So with that, everybody, that's all from me. Axel, do you kind of have any closing remarks you want to add on before we go ahead and
I hope it if all this conversation can just help one person, I think we fulfilled our mission.
Absolutely. Extremely well said. I really appreciate that. So thank you again, Axel. And with that, everybody, always remember, this is ground zero. There's nowhere to go away from. There's nowhere. How did I just mess that up?
It's okay.
All right. Let's try that again. This is ground zero, and there's nowhere to go from here but up.